Thank you, Neil. Fellow Toastmasters and guests this evening. I do have a few notes. It could become quite a technical speech by the time I'm finished with it, so I'll need to resort to those. This is quite a privilege to present my second pathways speech, titled Cold Water Can Kill. The idea actually came about from a report I read recently from the Lifesaving Victoria. It was the 2017-2018 Victoria drownings. So not a happy piece of reading, but I went through it anyway, and I learnt that there was 107 near drownings in Victoria last year, and out of those 40 of them were fatal and 67 were non-fatal. Further, that probably out of the ratio between men and women, there were 75% of these incidents occurred to men and 25% occurred to women. I also learnt that probably 50% of these events took place in either the bay or the ocean, and about 35% of them took place in rivers, dams or lakes as well. So it gives you a bit of a breakdown on the different areas. It also suggested that I think 35% of these incidents were people just swimming, paddling in the water, just doing the regular things that we do at the beach or at those water ways, and probably 15% of these incidents and also fatalities occurred in boats and fishing. And also importantly there's been a 35% increase in deaths in the category of males aged 45 to 64. Which I think falls into both mine and your category, Simon, does it not? I think those age groups. You'll learn hopefully tonight about the devastating effects of cold water on the body, and that most people die from drowning and not hypothermia, as is normally believed. What actually happens to the body and things that we can do to counteract that if we find ourselves in that position. The cold water actually carries away heat from your body 25 times faster than the normal air temperature or temperature of the air at the same temperature. So your core body heat will actually deteriorate, and it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for that to get down to 35 or below 35 degrees Celsius, which will affect your judgment and ability to gauge things and ability to be able to move as well. For decades we have believed that it is hypothermia that causes these deaths, and even the fact that if you're in the water less than the 20 or 30 minutes required for hypothermia to set in, they're still saying that it was hypothermia. We've actually since noted that most people die from the drowning and not the hypothermia. A recent report in the Canadian Safe Boating Council stated that 40% of these deaths occur within 10 metres of shore, so not very far at all. Another 22% within 10 or 15 metres of the shore, and a similar British survey in 1977 stated that 55% of these deaths occur within 3 metres of safety. So it certainly proves the case that you're probably not lying out in the water for a long time for this to happen. There's clearly some mechanism at play here which prevents the victims from being able to get themselves to safety. And this mechanism is a physiological and neurological shock by sudden immersion in the water and functioning disability caused by a cooling of the muscles of the limbs rather than the actual core body temperature. And the scientists have broken that down into 3 stages as well. The first is cold shock. So when your body first hits the water, there's receptors in your skin that cause you to gasp. So we all know when we jump into a cold pool or a cold beach and you get that sudden, oh my God, this is bloody cold. And if you do that while you're underwater, it's certainly not good to swallow all that water as well. It causes you to hyperventilate, so your blood pressure goes up, your heart begins to race as well. This has the effect of causing you to panic, which also exacerbates the hyperventilation, so it's probably quite hard to swim if you're in that position, quite hard to swim out of trouble. It takes about a minute for that to stabilise. And then comes the next stage, which is the cold incapacity. So after a few minutes, your limbs are affected, your neuromuscular activity slows, and the body fluids in your muscles actually congeal, so they don't work quite as well either. It affects your hands and your fingers first, so it's going to affect you if you wanting to fire off a flare or do up a life jacket, you need to act pretty quickly so you can do that, because after about 10 minutes or getting close to that, your legs and your arms won't work at all. You won't be able to kick, you won't be able to swim, you really won't be able to do a lot at that stage. Even keeping your head above the water when you're that cold with nothing working, it's very hard to do. So during these two stages, you're still likely to drown rather than hyperventilate at that stage there, or hypothermia. So the third stage is hypothermia. It takes 20 to 30 minutes for that to happen, for your core body temperature to go below 35 degrees Celsius. And you get about half an hour to an hour of useful consciousness before you're really up in trouble there. You're still likely to die more from drowning as you start to go under the water. Unless you can keep your airways open and get a breath, then you're going to drown. What can we do about that? Well, Gordon Gishbrecht, a leading thermophysiologist at the University of Manitoba, has developed the 1-10-1 rule. 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour. It's a strategy for managing sudden cold water immersion. We'll quickly go through it. The 1 minute, as we discussed, that's when your body starts to hyperventilate, your heart's racing there. You need to try and be calm at that stage. You need to try and keep your head above the water, and probably at that stage you need to plan what you're going to do next. The next is the 10-minute stage. So this is when your body, as mentioned, starts to not work the way that you want it to work. You probably can't swim long distances. You need to, while you've got 10 minutes and you've got a bit of fine motor skills and some being able to move your body, you probably want to look for a life jacket that you can put on, or perhaps fire off a flare, or get yourself above the water if you can and lean on the wreckage of your boat that's there. Then it's the 1 hour. You've got about an hour of useful consciousness at this stage. If you're unable to self-rescue, then you need to adapt and find a position where you're not as much in the water. And if you can secure yourself so that when you go unconscious, if your head's still above the water, you've probably got more of a chance of dying of hypothermia then, but also you've got more time to be rescued as well. So look, that's probably it. I think you're all hopefully a little bit wiser about how cold water can kill, and better understanding of how to cope with it. Just a quick reminder that Simon Wallaker later on tonight is himself immersing himself into cold water. We wish him luck and remind him of Dr. Gishbrecht's 1-10-1 rule as well, Simon. And I hope you can all join me next meeting when I'll be presenting my report on the risk of shark attacks in Port Phillip Bay. Thank you.